Sometimes in tech, you see a comeback story that just seems impossible. This is one of those. I'm talking about a company that literally went from making half the phones on the entire planet to the brink of collapse, only to be brought back totally transformed for the age of AI. And it all centers on this number, $1 billion. Now, in late 2025, this is the amount that NVIDIA's CEO, Jensen Huang, the guy at the absolute epicenter of the entire AI revolution, decided to invest in Nokia. And yeah, I mean that Nokia, the one you're thinking of. And look, this wasn't some quiet backroom deal either. Oh no, Juan gets up on stage and announces it to the whole world. We have a big partnership with Nokia. Just like that. And boom, it sent a total shockwave through the industry. Nokia's stock just took off. So, the question is, how did this happen? How did the company famous for those indestructible brick phones suddenly become NVIDIA's billion-dollar bet on the future of AI? It's a crazy story. And to really get the comeback, you first have to understand just how bad the collapse was. I mean, let's be real. For a whole generation, Nokia wasn't just a phone company, it was the phone company. They basically were phones. But their fall, wow, it was faster and honestly more brutal than pretty much anyone could have seen coming. Okay, so picture this. It's 2007. The first iPhone launches. But Nokia, they're laughing. They're the undisputed king, holding a 50% share of the entire smartphone market. They even hit their best sales year ever in 2008, after the iPhone. But that threat from iOS and the brand new Android ecosystem, it was very, very real. And by 2012, the company wasn't just slipping, it was in an absolute freefall. Just try to wrap your head around that. From a staggering 50% market share, all the way down to less than 3%. And that was in just 7 years. They didn't just lose the game, they were completely wiped off the map. A map they pretty much drew themselves. And inside the company, you can bet the panic was real. The new CEO, Stephen Ullop, sends out this now infamous memo to everyone. He basically said, "Folks, we're standing on a burning platform." Imagine getting that email. He said they could either stay on the platform and burn, or take a terrifying leap into the unknown. It was this incredibly desperate, very public admission that things were going horribly wrong. And the numbers don't lie. From its peak value back in 2000, Nokia's worth had just cratered by 98%. 98. At that point, bankruptcy wasn't just a possibility on the horizon. For most people looking at it, it felt absolutely inevitable. But just as it looks like the company was about to go completely under, its chairman came up with this incredibly audacious plan. It was a strategic pivot that, honestly, would go down as one of the most remarkable moves in corporate history. The chairman, a guy named Risto Siilasmaa, had this amazing way of putting it. He said it was like they were reassembling an airplane in mid-flight. They weren't just trying to patch up the plane. They were going to tear it apart and build a totally different one, all while plummeting towards the ground. And to do that, they had to do the unthinkable. Let go of the one thing that made them famous in the first place, their phones. So, in 2013, Microsoft shows up with a big check, $7.2 billion to buy Nokia's entire phone division. Now, at the time, everyone saw this as the end, the final nail in the coffin for this legendary Finnish company. It was heartbreaking, really. But here's the twist. Just 2 years later, Microsoft writes off $7.6 billion. That's more than they even paid, admitting they'd basically bought a business that was already toast. So you see, Nokia hadn't just sold a sinking ship. They got paid a fortune to jump off of it. So what looked like a failure was actually a total masterclass in how to escape a dying business. They walked away with a boatload of cash, they kept all their valuable patents, and they had a secret weapon that almost nobody was paying attention to. So, what do you do with $7.2 billion in cash when your company's just been saved from the brink? Well, Nokia didn't just use it to survive. They used it to become something completely, fundamentally different. And the pivot, it was actually pretty simple, but totally profound. They decided, okay, we're going to stop making the shiny devices people hold in their hands, and instead, we're going to start making the invisible networks that all of those devices desperately need to work. They jumped from the business they were getting crushed in to one they'd actually been quietly building for years. And when I say they went all in, I mean they went all in. In 2015, they spent a jaw-dropping 15.6 billion euros to buy Alcatel-Lucent, another huge telecom company. This was a total bet the company kind of move. They were trying to build a real competitor to the new giants on the block, like Huawei and Ericsson. And that one purchase gave them basically everything they were missing. Suddenly, they had a complete network portfolio, the right kind of routing tech, and, get this, the legendary Bell Labs. I'm talking about the research powerhouse that pretty much invented cellular networks in the first place. All of a sudden, Nokia had the R&D muscle to be a real leader in the coming 5G revolution. But the fight for 5G turned out to be absolutely brutal. After some early wins, Nokia actually started losing ground again. And just when things were starting to look a little bleak, this completely unexpected lifeline appeared, and it came straight from the heart of the AI boom. The problem was pretty stark. Huge US carriers like AT&T and Verizon started dropping Nokia for their rivals. We're talking billions of dollars in lost contracts. Their whole strategy of being the Western alternative to Huawei just wasn't working as well as they'd hoped. They desperately needed a new edge. And that edge, it came from this new idea called AI RAN. Now, the concept is actually pretty simple to grasp. What if cell towers could do more than just pass data along? What if the towers themselves could, think? The idea was to stick powerful NVIDIA AI chips right into the network itself, creating a system that can make itself smarter and faster, all in real time. Okay, but why Nokia? Why not one of their rivals? Well, it's because their network tech was just built differently. You can think of it like this. Most networks had their processing power kind of bolted on the side like an afterthought, but Nokia's unique inline design put that processing power right at the very core of the data stream. And that was the key. It meant they could slot NVIDIA's AI chips right into the flow of data without having to tear down the whole system and start over. Their big competitor, Ericsson, couldn't do that. Out of all the big Western players, Nokia was the only one whose architecture was actually ready for this AI future. So when you look back at this whole crazy journey, from almost dying to becoming NVIDIA's chosen partner for the future of networks, what are the big takeaways? Well, it really boils down to 3 absolutely brilliant strategic moves. Okay, so here's the playbook. Step 1. They had the guts to sell the very thing that made them famous while it still had some value. Step 2. They took that crisis money and didn't just use it to survive. They spent it on building a totally new future. And step 3, and this might be the most important, they bet on a hidden strength they already had. Their savior wasn't some brand new invention. It was a part of their company that had been there all along. Nokia's old slogan was connecting people. And the funny thing is, they're still doing it, just not with phones anymore. They absolutely lost the battle for the device in your pocket, no question. But this billion-dollar bet with NVIDIA, it's a bet that they can win the much bigger war for the intelligent, AI-powered network that's going to connect, everything else. So yeah, they lost the smartphone war. But the real question is, can they now win the war for whatever comes next?